Right now, you are staring at a screen. The crisp, illuminated text sits perfectly in focus, while light washes gently over your eyes, allowing you to read these words with effortless clarity. If your vision dims or blur falls over the page, you do not panic. You simply reach for a pair of glasses, slide on contact lenses, or book a quick, routine appointment with an optometrist. Your sight is protected by thousands of years of human engineering, safely wrapped in a world built for your biological comfort. But for nearly 99% of human history, there were no glass lenses, no corrective surgeries, and no clear paths to safety when your eyes began to fail. In the unforgiving wilderness of the Pleistocene, where spotting a camouflaged predator in the high grass was the only thing standing between you and a brutal death, fading vision was not an inconvenience. It was a rapid, terrifying countdown to total vulnerability. So, the question is simple. For hundreds of thousands of years, with no glasses, no eye drops, and no modern medicine, how did human beings with failing eyes or complete blindness actually manage to survive? Here's what nobody tells you about the ancient world. We like to imagine early humans as solitary apex hunters, roaming the wilderness in small, hyper-athletic bands where every single individual had to be a perfect physical specimen to pull their weight. But that brutal image falls apart the moment you look at the dust. In 1957, deep inside Shanidar Cave in the Zagros Mountains of modern-day Iraq, a team of archaeologists led by Ralph Solekar uncovered something that shattered our understanding of early human survival. They found the fossilized skeleton of a Neanderthal man buried with extraordinary care. When scientists examined his skull, they discovered he was not just old. He had suffered a massive, catastrophic trauma to the left side of his head early in his life. The impact crushed his eye socket, rendering him completely blind in one eye, while destroying his right arm and leaving him severely crippled. Yet, bone regrowth proved that this man lived for decades after sustaining those catastrophic injuries. Think about that for a second. In a world where every single day was a desperate fight for caloric survival, a tribe of early humans chose to carry, feed, protect, and shelter a man who could neither hunt nor defend himself for over 20 years. His survival was not an accident of nature. It was an intentional act of profound, sustained human devotion. When an ancient hunter lost their sight, they did not simply die alone in the grass. The tribe absorbed the loss, adjusting their roles and using their collective strength to cover the blind spot of the individual. Of course, caring for the blind was only half the battle, because ancient environments were relentlessly hostile to human eyes. Imagine waking up in a blinding, endless blizzard on the frozen steppes of Ice Age Europe 20,000 years ago. Sunlight reflects off the white landscape with unbearable intensity, flooding your retinas with ultraviolet radiation until your corneas burn, blister, and temporarily blind you in an agony known as snow blindness. Long before modern sunglasses existed, early humans had to invent a way to bend light to their will. Here's the part nobody talks about. Instead of suffering through the blinding glare, Arctic ancestors engineered one of the earliest pieces of wearable technology in human history. They took flat pieces of walrus ivory, caribou antler, or driftwood, carved them to fit flush against the human face, and sliced razor-thin horizontal slits directly across the front, by drastically cutting down the amount of light entering the eye. These primitive snow goggles stopped the lethal glare, sharpened focus, and allowed hunters to track game across blinding glaciers without losing their sight. It was an astonishing triumph of early engineering. They realized that even if human biology was fragile, human creativity could forge a shield to protect it. Yet physical protection could not stop the invisible enemies that attacked human eyes from within. Parasites, bacterial infections, and severe inflammation were constant threats in a world without sterile water or antibiotic ointments. A simple scratch from a thorn or a speck of blowing ash from a campfire could easily trigger an infection that clouded the cornea or caused excruciating, permanent blindness. Here's what doesn't make sense until you think about it. Long before anyone understood germs or cellular biology, early humans spent tens of thousands of years observing the natural world, testing every leaf, root, and mineral to find remedies for their aching eyes. In the famous Ebers Papyrus, an ancient medical document from Egypt dating back to roughly 1550 BCE, that compiles knowledge far older than its written date, researchers found detailed recipes for eye ointments made from crushed copper ore, malachite, and honey. Found it. To a modern listener, rubbing raw minerals and honey into an infected eye sounds like primitive madness. Nefeder. But modern chemistry reveals a startling truth. Malachite contains high concentrations of copper carbonate, a natural antibacterial compound, while raw honey creates an osmotic barrier that smothers bacteria and promotes rapid tissue healing. They did not know the science behind the microbes, but through relentless trial, error, and shared generational knowledge, your ancestors stumbled upon effective natural pharmacology to save their sight. Still, what happened when the problem was not a temporary infection or an environmental glare, but the slow, inevitable decay of aging eyes? As humans cross into middle age, the natural lenses inside their eyes stiffen, making it progressively harder to focus on objects up close. Today, we call it presbyopia, and we solve it with a trip to the store for reading glasses. But 30,000 years ago, losing your close-range vision meant you could no longer nap flint into sharp arrowheads, weave tight waterproof baskets, inspect gathered plants for deadly toxins, or remove tiny, infected splinters from your children's skin. This is where human culture pulled off its greatest trick. Instead of casting aside older individuals whose close-up vision was failing, early human societies completely reshaped the structure of their daily work. As the young, eagle-eyed hunters ranged across miles of open territory to track fast-moving game, older members of the tribe transitioned into roles that relied on muscle memory, tactical wisdom, tactile feel, and oral history. An elder whose eyes could no longer see fine detail could still teach the young how to read animal tracks by feel in the mud, sing the complex navigation maps of distant waterholes, or mentor the next generation in the subtle art of survival. Nearsightedness or aging eyes did not diminish a person's worth. It simply redirected their energy into becoming the living library of the band. What happens, though, when the light fades entirely and total darkness settles in for good? In a world without streetlights, paved roads, or clear paths, living without sight seems like an impossible nightmare. But the human brain possesses a remarkable hidden superpower that scientists call neuroplasticity. Think about that for a second. When the brain is deprived of visual input, it does not simply let those complex neural pathways sit idle. Instead, it aggressively rewires itself, reallocating massive amounts of processing power to the remaining senses. In 2012, neuroscientists studying hunter-gatherer communities and rural populations discovered that visually impaired individuals developed extraordinary, highly heightened capabilities in auditory localization and tactile sensitivity. An ancient human who was completely blind could hear the faint, subtle rustle of a stalking leopard in the brush long before a sighted hunter spotted it. They could feel tiny changes in humidity and wind direction on their skin, predicting incoming storms hours before they broke over the camp. They could memorize hundreds of complex medicinal plant locations purely by smell and leaf texture. The blind were not helpless burdens waiting for rescue. They became the ultimate human radars, sensing the invisible world that sighted people blithely walked right past. Every time an ancient human lost their sight, their survival hinged on a profound truth that sets our species apart from almost every other living thing on Earth. Animals in the wild rely almost entirely on physical perfection. A blind wolf or a blind eagle is usually dead within days. But human beings did not conquer this planet because we had the sharpest eyes, the fastest legs, or the strongest jaws. We conquered it because we learned to see for each other. When the cold winds of the Pleistocene swept across the plains, bringing blinding snow, devastating eye diseases, and the slow, inevitable dimming of old age, your ancestors did not surrender to the dark. They carved goggles out of bone to beat the glare. They crushed minerals from the earth to soothe burning infections. They reconfigured their tribes so that no member was left behind simply because their eyes had failed them. They realized that a person who can no longer see with their eyes can still guide their people with their wisdom, their memory, and their heart. Now take a moment and step back into your modern reality. Feel the cool air in the room. Listen to the low, steady hum of the electronics around you. Look down at your hands, crisp and clear in the soft, warm light of your screen. When your eyes grow tired tonight, when you slide off your glasses or rub your weary lids after a long day of staring at digital light, remember where you came from. You are the descendant of survivors who navigated a dark, terrifying, and beautiful world not through the strength of their eyes alone, but through the endless depth of their empathy, their ingenuity, and their devotion to one another. Your ancestors walked through the dark so that you could live in the light.